So, you feel the need to control someone, right? Or maybe you're just here out of curiosity. Because of course, no one wants to admit that power is real, that manipulation shapes the world. You either control or you're being controlled. This society is terrified of the truth. It would rather stay asleep than acknowledge that someone is always pulling the strings behind the scenes. But as Carl Jung often pointed out, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. I'd rather know than live in denial. And now, you will too. I'm going to show you 7 techniques that can cause anyone to behave the way you want, without even realizing it. I'll start with the subtle ones, the kind that give you a quiet edge in any interaction, and end with the most powerful, the ones that shape another's will without raising suspicion. If you think this sounds dangerous, you're absolutely right. But what's even more dangerous is being unaware, because even if you never use these methods, someone else might use them on you. So pay close attention, because once you finish this video, you'll see the world through different eyes. Psychological mirroring, the subtlest form of influence. People trust what feels familiar. If you manage to resemble someone just enough, their defenses begin to drop, often without them knowing. Jung spoke of the shadow, the unconscious patterns that influence our behavior. Psychological mirroring is not crude mimicry, but a soft reflection of someone's energy. If done well, it creates trust invisibly. It all begins with body language. If they cross their arms, do the same after a few moments. If they lean an elbow on the table, casually echo the gesture. Don't be obvious or immediate. Move like their shadow, silent, fluid, adaptive, until you naturally start leading the interaction. You should also match the tone and pace of their voice. If they speak quickly, speed up just a little. If they speak slowly, lower your rhythm. The subconscious associates familiar tones with trust. Adjust your volume to match theirs, and they'll feel in sync with you, without questioning why. Words matter too. If someone says, "This doesn't feel right," don't shut them down with cold logic. Instead say, "Yeah, I feel that too." The unconscious accepts what's familiar, and when you match their language style, the connection becomes immediate. But this isn't just about mirroring. It's about leading. If someone is upset, don't rush to calm them. First, validate. Sit with them in their emotion, then gradually guide them toward calm. Don't push, lead. You'll know it's working when they start relaxing and unconsciously mirroring you. That's when trust is built. And once you have it, you can guide the conversation wherever you want, without them realizing. The best manipulators don't impose. They simply make everything unfold in their favor. The strategic use of silence. Make discomfort work for you. Most people hate silence. When a conversation stalls, they feel the urge to fill the gap with words, even if that means saying too much. Silence is awkward, but those who master it control it. When you say something important and leave a pause, especially after a question, you'll notice the other person feels compelled to respond, to justify, or to keep talking. They can't help it. The human brain hates empty space, and that's your opportunity. For example, if you want someone to tell you more, say less. Once they speak, stay quiet. Don't nod. Don't react. Just hold the space. That emptiness becomes unbearable, and in trying to break it, they'll reveal things they never meant to. This principle works in arguments too, or in negotiations. When someone pressures you for a quick response, pause. Don't rush to fill the silence with explanations. The longer you wait, the more anxious they become. The silence becomes your power. In that state, it is more likely that the person will yield first, feel unsure about their own position, or eventually accept what you propose. But silence is not only a tool for gathering information, it is also a way to express psychological mastery. If you make a strong statement and then fall silent, simply holding eye contact, you convey authority without ever needing to raise your voice. The discomfort will do the work for you. Try this in your next conversation. Use silence after a key question or a pivotal assertion. Don't rush to fill the gap with more words. Just watch as the other person begins to squirm, to question themselves, and unknowingly, they hand you control of the entire exchange. The one who can withstand the silence holds power in the conversation. This taps into what Carl Jung called the tension of opposites, where transformation occurs not by action, but by remaining consciously still in the discomfort. When you stay in that space, the psyche of the other begins to shift. You're no longer reacting, you're leading. Now take this further. Reframe their perception of reality. Change the way they see a situation, and make them view it in a way that aligns with your outcome. This is where we move into a more subtle but incredibly powerful form of influence. True control doesn't lie in forcing someone to act. It lies in making them see the world in a way that favors your goals. And that is precisely what reframing does. People don't respond to objective facts. They react to the meaning those facts carry. If you can alter the way someone interprets a situation, you can influence their behavior without ever pushing them. The key lies in redefining the emotional or psychological significance of what they perceive. Give them a new lens through which to view the moment, one that naturally leads them to the conclusion you want. For example, if someone complains that a task is too hard, don't contradict them. Say, "That's not a burden, it's a test." The ones who overcome challenges like this are the ones who end up with the power. Suddenly, it's no longer a problem. Now, it's an opportunity to grow. You haven't forced them to accept the task. You've given it new meaning. And when someone believes something is their choice, they defend it more fiercely. Another example, if someone is hesitant to take an action that benefits you, don't argue. Don't try to persuade. Change the frame. Instead of saying, "You should do it," say, "People with vision, don't let chances like this pass." You're not asking for anything. You've created a reality where the only rational option is action. This principle is used in marketing, politics, and high-level persuasion. The media doesn't tell you what to think. They tell you how to interpret what you're already seeing. And once you control someone's interpretation, you control their emotional and behavioral response. Use this consciously in your conversations. If someone is perceiving something in a way that doesn't benefit you, don't oppose it directly. Reframe their perception, offer a new meaning, and watch how their response changes without them ever realizing why. As Jung might say, we see the world not as it is, but as we are. When you alter someone's internal framework, you alter the external world they believe they're living in. The one who defines the frame defines the reality. Now let's raise the level again. This next technique goes beyond perception. It subtly shapes decision-making itself. It's called the illusion of choice. When done skillfully, it leads someone to your desired outcome without them realizing they were guided there. When you offer someone a limited set of options, all of which serve your interest, they feel in control, while you quietly steer the direction. People resist being forced, but when they feel like they're choosing freely, they'll embrace what they might otherwise reject. The illusion of choice involves giving alternatives that are strategically crafted so that no matter what they choose, the end result benefits you. A simple example, instead of asking, "Do you want to do this?" ask, "Would you prefer to do this now or in an hour?" The first gives them a chance to say no. The second keeps you in control. Another, more advanced case. If you want someone to accept a proposal, don't offer just one path. Give them two options, but both inside your zone of benefit. You might say, "We can go with the standard version or the premium. Which one works better for you?" In their mind, they've already agreed. They're just choosing the format. This strategy is used in sales, negotiation, and leadership. Political figures apply it when they offer choices that all lead to the same destination. Business leaders use it to make you feel like you've made a free decision, when in truth, you've simply picked from a curated set of options. The secret is this: never let the person see beyond the boundaries you've defined. Jung emphasized the power of the unconscious in guiding our decisions. What we perceive as choice is often the product of deeper, unseen influences. When you construct the frame and the apparent options within it, you shape the unconscious narrative the other person follows. That is influence at its highest form. The trick isn't domination. It's subtle psychological guidance. Don't demand. Don't pressure. Simply present a world where every road leads exactly where you want it to. The person may feel they're walking their own path, but in truth, you've drawn the map. If you want someone to do something, don't offer them a direct refusal point. Instead, shape the dialogue in a way that they believe they're making the decision freely, when in truth, they are walking directly toward the outcome you intended from the start. When you guide the perception of choice, you steer the outcome. This is not mere manipulation. It's an understanding of how the unconscious mind seeks safety in agency. People feel at ease when they believe they're in control, even if they're responding to impulses seated deep within the psyche. When you alter a person's expectations, you alter their reality. Once those expectations shift, they will accept what they previously resisted. This is where control moves to a much deeper psychological layer. If you succeed in adjusting someone's internal frame of reference, you can lead them to embrace possibilities they would have never previously entertained. Carl Jung spoke often of how perception is not a mirror of reality, but a projection of the inner world. Control that inner lens, and you shift the entire landscape. The key lies in contrast. Present something extreme at first, difficult, overwhelming, even absurd. Then offer what you truly wanted from the beginning. Compared to the first option, your real desire now seems mild, even reasonable. This is known as psychological contrast. By asking for something excessive first, then appearing to make a concession, you seem accommodating, while in reality, you've merely guided the psyche to the endpoint you intended all along. Say you want someone to agree to a favor. Start by asking for something far greater. When they decline, follow with your true request. That second ask will now feel far more acceptable in comparison. Corporations do this constantly. They present the most expensive product first, then a slightly cheaper option that still costs a lot. But now, it feels like a bargain. Skilled negotiators open with exaggerated demands, only to compromise down to what they actually wanted. This contrast reshapes desire and logic alike. Another layer to this is the manipulation of perceived value. If you condition someone to expect very little, then give slightly more, it will seem like a gift. A person used to minimal attention, when offered just a little more, may feel overwhelmed with gratitude. In truth, you've offered very little. The illusion lies in the shift of expectation, not in the substance. This is the essence of how the unconscious compares new input with past experiences. Set the reference point, and you control the emotional impact. Try this in any conversation or negotiation. Don't make your actual request immediately. First, introduce a more demanding alternative. Then ask for what you truly want. The human mind does not evaluate in absolutes. It evaluates in relation to what came before. Shape that sequence, and you shape the choice. When you control the comparison, you guide the decision without resistance. Now, we move into a deeper current, one that touches the inner mechanisms of attachment, reward, and psychological dependency. Carl Jung often noted that the human psyche is drawn to mystery, to the unknown. This next technique uses that same instinct, intermittent reinforcement. It creates emotional addiction not through consistency, but through unpredictability. It is the foundation of all toxic dynamics, relationships, ideologies, even digital platforms. Intermittent reinforcement works by alternating attention and withdrawal. You give presence, then pull away. The key is never to offer your validation as something predictable. The psyche doesn't attach to certainty. It attaches to what is uncertain. When you are always available in the same way, the unconscious adapts and grows indifferent. But when you shift between intimacy and distance, the inner child awakens, hungry, searching, obsessive. The brain enters a loop of anxiety and longing, chasing what was once given freely but is now withheld. This is how gambling works. It's how social media keeps us hooked. They don't reward us consistently. They shift between stimulation and emptiness, keeping us in a state of anticipation. We begin to crave not what is, but what might be. The fantasy replaces the truth. The projection becomes stronger than reality. This is how you get someone to think about you without even realizing why. If they're used to immediate replies, start delaying them. If they're used to constant praise, take it away for a while, then return it in small, controlled amounts. That uncertainty plants the seed of obsession. As Jung observed, the unconscious seeks symbols, signs, and meaning in chaos. Intermittent reinforcement becomes the symbolic chaos that the mind can't stop decoding. When you use this technique, the other person never quite feels they have you. And because they never possess you, they continue seeking you. It is not abundance that generates longing, but managed scarcity. Scarcity awakens desire. It activates the archetype of the seeker. What is easily attained loses value. What is withheld becomes sacred. The deeper truth is this: we are not addicted to presence. We are addicted to the mystery of its absence. If you want someone to remain connected to you, don't offer them everything right away. Let them earn it. And once they do, allow them to feel they could lose it at any moment. The one who controls validation controls the psyche. According to Carl Jung, the human mind is shaped not only by external forces, but by the unconscious need for meaning, approval, and belonging. This is where the implantation of ideas begins. Make them believe the idea was their own. That is the highest form of influence, not commanding someone to act, but leading them to believe that the decision was born from within. When an individual feels they've reached a conclusion on their own, they will defend it with far more passion than they ever would defend an imposed directive. This is because the ego is deeply invested in the illusion of autonomy. Here lies the essence of subtle influence, not to dictate or overtly suggest, but to guide thought delicately. You must plant the seed of an idea without them noticing, steering the interaction so that the other person arrives, seemingly of their own accord, at the conclusion you wanted all along. Rather than saying, "You should do this," ask reflective questions. What if you tried this instead? Or, how do you think it would feel if you made that choice? Or even, if someone were in your position, what might they do? With these questions, you're not offering instructions. You're activating their internal dialogue, what Jung might describe as prompting a confrontation with the self. You're drawing the answer from the unconscious, allowing their shadow to speak, while making them believe it's purely conscious reasoning. Another effective method is the principle of repeated exposure. Introduce a concept during different conversations, at separate moments, and casually. When an idea is heard multiple times without direct resistance, the mind begins to process it beneath awareness. Jung observed that the unconscious often accepts what is familiar, and the human mind, in its search for order, begins to associate familiarity with truth. Media, marketing, and mass persuasion rely on this principle. The more often something is heard or seen, the more natural it feels, even if it's false. So if you want someone to believe or do something, don't command it. Plant the seed gently and let their unconscious nurture it. Eventually, they'll act on what they believe was their own idea. They'll move in your direction, not because they were pushed, but because they chose to walk there. True control doesn't feel like control. It feels like free will. I've shared 7 subtle techniques with you. They are effective, but still gentle. Yes, they work, but they barely scratch the surface of what's truly possible. Once you begin to master the art of influence, you'll discover far deeper, darker, and more dangerous techniques. These advanced methods don't just sway decisions, they reshape entire thought patterns. They can align someone's mind to your will without them ever questioning it. But such tools are not for everyone. They are powerful and ethically dangerous, and not all are ready to use them. If you want me to reveal those techniques, prove it. Like this video and leave a comment. Only when I see that there's real interest in learning more will I unveil the next level. Because knowledge is power, but only for those willing to wield it. In the end, it all comes down to this. Control has nothing to do with force. It has everything to do with perception. It's not about making others obey. It's about guiding them to choose what you already intended. And as Carl Jung understood so clearly, he who looks outside dreams. He who looks inside awakens. Whoever masters the mind, masterfully, silently, masters the world. What if I told you that your psychological environment is secretly programming your mind against you? Carl Jung discovered that certain environments don't just influence you, they sabotage your mental health from the inside out. In this video, I will reveal what those environments are, how to recognize them, and the psychological protocol to escape. Jung identified 7 psychological environments that slowly destroy the mental strength of most people. These are not physical places, but invisible traps of the mind that you walk into every single day without even realizing it. Many people spend years stuck in these psychological spaces, wondering why they feel drained, anxious, or lost, blaming themselves for what they don't understand. But Jung knew the truth. In 1961, he treated a patient who at first glance looked completely normal. Yet beneath the surface, he was slowly unraveling. Jung traced the cause of his decline to 7 specific psychological spaces that the man was unconsciously inhabiting day after day. Once Jung guided him to recognize and escape these traps, his transformation was profound, almost as if he had been given a new mind. What Jung uncovered about these hidden environments has the power to change how you see every relationship, every decision, and even every room you walk into for the rest of your life. The first and most dangerous space Jung identified was what he called the echo chamber. In this mental prison, every voice around you simply reflects your own fears, opinions, and prejudices back at you until they harden into something that feels like absolute truth. Jung's patients spent hours in social groups and political gatherings where everyone mirrored the same worldview, the same anxieties, and the same anger. He believed he was being informed, but Jung saw clearly that his mind was being poisoned. This is what happens to your brain in an echo chamber. Your neural pathways weaken. Research shows that when you are never exposed to challenges or opposing views, your capacity for critical thought begins to atrophy like an unused muscle. Jung described this as a form of collective possession, when group thinking overrides individual judgment. The patient stopped questioning, because to question felt like betrayal. The signs of being trapped in an echo chamber are unmistakable. You can predict exactly what everyone around you will say on any topic. Differing opinions feel like threats to your identity rather than interesting challenges. You stop asking yourself the essential question, what if I'm wrong? Conversations become repetitive cycles that only reinforce what you already believe. Jung observed that people who live inside echo chambers don't just stop growing. They begin to shrink. Their minds become smaller, weaker, and more fearful, and they rely on the group's approval to feel safe. But that is only the beginning. Once weakened by the echo chamber, you become vulnerable to the second dangerous environment, the arena of comparison, where your self-worth is measured only in relation to the status and achievements of others. Jung's patient, already fragile, became obsessed with comparing his life to that of his peers. Every story of success he heard felt like a personal defeat. Even his own achievements lost their meaning the moment someone else had done more. Studies confirm what Jung observed, that constant comparison shrinks the prefrontal cortex, the very part of your brain responsible for self-esteem and decision-making. The trap is cruel. Comparison doesn't motivate you to improve. It trains your brain to search for deficiencies everywhere. Jung called this cycle one of inflation and deflation. You either feel superior or inferior, but never truly yourself. The patient explained, "I was promoted at work, but all I could think about was how my college friend became a CEO faster than I did." His victories meant nothing because they were never absolute, only relative. The signs of being trapped in the arena of comparison are clear. The success of others makes you feel like a failure. You reach your goals, but they feel empty because someone else did more. You live not for what brings you meaning, but for what looks impressive to others. Jung realized this space was especially lethal because it disconnects you from your own values and desires. You stop seeking what brings you joy and start chasing only what brings recognition. But the third space is even more insidious. To understand why, we need to look at the science. Modern neuroscience confirms Jung's insights. Toxic psychological environments cause a chronic release of cortisol, which literally shrinks the hippocampus, the region of the brain responsible for memory and emotional regulation. But Jung understood something deeper, something science could not yet prove. These environments don't just harm you temporarily, they reconfigure your default mental state. Spend enough time in them, and your brain begins to recreate their patterns even when you're alone. Jung's patient developed what neuroscientists today call learned helplessness. His brain had been conditioned by these environments to expect failure, criticism, and inadequacy. Even in safe places, he could not relax, because his neural pathways had been carved by psychological danger. This is why Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." These environments program your unconscious mind to work against you, and most people never realize it because the damage is subtle, gradual, and invisible. The third dangerous place Jung described is the theater of performance, where authenticity is punished and only the correct mask is rewarded. Jung's patient worked in a corporate environment where showing vulnerability was professional suicide. He learned to laugh at jokes he didn't find funny, agree with ideas he didn't believe in, and hide every part of himself that didn't fit the company culture. Jung called this identification with the persona, when the mask you wear becomes the only identity you recognize. The patient admitted, "I don't know who I am anymore. I've been performing for so long that my real self feels like a stranger." This psychological theater is deadly because it trains you to abandon yourself one compromise at a time. Each small betrayal may feel insignificant, but together they erase your essence. Research on self-compassion shows that people stuck in these performance theaters develop severe inner critics, internalizing the harsh judgments of their environment until they carry them everywhere they go. The signs are clear. You feel drained rather than energized after social interactions. You agree with things you don't truly believe. You fear sharing opinions that might be unpopular. You feel as though you're wearing a costume you can never remove. Your true thoughts and feelings begin to seem dangerous or inappropriate. The patient put it simply, "I became so good at being what others wanted that I forgot what I wanted. And when I tried to remember, there was nothing left." Jung realized this environment doesn't just hide your authentic self, it erases it, layer by layer, compromise by compromise, until you are left as an empty shell. And because performance theaters teach you to hide who you are, they make you vulnerable to the fourth dangerous environment, the space of silent suffering, where emotional needs are buried beneath the illusion of stability. Jung encountered this again and again in his practice. Patients who grew up in seemingly perfect families, where love was assumed but never expressed, where problems were ignored instead of faced, where appearances mattered more than connection. His patient came from exactly such a family. "We never fought," he told Jung, "but we never really talked either. I learned that having needs was selfish, and showing pain was weakness." This environment creates what Jung called emotional starvation. Your emotional needs don't vanish when ignored. They rot in the unconscious, generating anxiety, depression, and a hollow emptiness that cannot be explained. Studies on attachment confirm this. Suppressing emotions in relationships dysregulates your nervous system. Your body remains in chronic stress because your emotional needs are never met. The danger is that this space feels normal. The patient said, "I thought we were close because we never had conflicts. I didn't realize that avoiding conflict also meant avoiding intimacy. The signs of being trapped here are subtle but powerful. You feel lonely even when surrounded by people. You cope with pain instead of healing it. Asking for emotional support feels selfish or weak. You carry intense feelings but have no safe space to express them. The peace in your relationships feels fragile, as if honesty would shatter it. Jung found that people in this space become deeply disconnected from their own inner reality. They know something is wrong, but cannot name it, because to name it would break the unspoken rules of their family or community. And then comes the fifth dangerous environment, the storm of chaos, where constant mental stimulation drowns out your inner voice until you can no longer hear yourself think. Jung's patient lived permanently in this state, newspapers demanding his attention, radio programs feeding his anxiety, endless social gatherings draining his energy, work obligations consuming even his private life. He filled every moment of silence with reading, talking, or activity because stillness felt unbearable. What he didn't realize was that this wasn't preference, it was avoidance. He feared what the silence might reveal: unresolved pain, unmade decisions, or hidden parts of himself he didn't want to confront. Research shows that chronic overstimulation damages your ability to form coherent thoughts and clear decisions. The prefrontal cortex becomes overloaded and begins making impulsive choices simply to reduce the mental burden. Carl Jung called this psychic fragmentation. It happens when your attention becomes so scattered that you lose the ability to weave your experiences into wisdom. The patient he observed consumed enormous amounts of information, yet could not truly understand or integrate it. The hidden trap lies in the addictive nature of chaos itself. The brain, adapting to overstimulation, begins to crave even more intense inputs just to feel normal. What once felt overwhelming becomes the new baseline, and silence starts to feel unbearable rather than soothing. Moments of quiet trigger anxiety because the nervous system has forgotten how to regulate itself. You can recognize the storm of chaos when silence immediately drives you to reach for a book, a newspaper, or the radio. You may develop strong opinions about everything, but carry no real depth of knowledge about anything. Life feels busy and packed, yet when asked what you actually accomplished, you cannot remember. Slowing down brings not peace, but restlessness. You absorb endless streams of information, but you feel hollow inside. The patient confessed to Jung, "I stay busy because when I stop, everything I've been avoiding catches up with me. But I am exhausted from running, and as the storm of chaos teaches you to silence your inner voice, you become vulnerable to an even more insidious danger, the chamber of self-abandonment. This is where you systematically ignore your own needs, instincts, and truths. It rarely arrives all at once. It creeps in gradually. You say yes when everything inside of you screams no. You remain in draining relationships because leaving feels more frightening than staying. You begin choosing comfort over authenticity, security over growth. The patient described it with piercing clarity. I became so skilled at ignoring my instincts that I eventually stopped having them. Every decision I made was based on what others expected, on what seemed practical, or on what would prevent conflict. Trauma research shows that chronic self-abandonment disconnects you from the wisdom of your own body. You lose touch with the ability to recognize what you need, want, or feel because those signals have been constantly silenced. Jung named this the loss of soul, not a mystical abstraction, but a psychological reality in which you become a stranger to yourself. The patient admitted, "I felt like I was living someone else's life. I couldn't remember the last time I made a decision based on what I truly wanted. This place is particularly dangerous because it disguises itself as maturity, responsibility, or even selflessness. Society often rewards self-abandonment, which makes it far harder to recognize it as a problem. The signs are subtle, but devastating. You cannot recall the last time you paused to examine your own feelings. Your choices are dictated by expectations rather than inner resonance. Preferences that once mattered vanish. You drift into a state of autopilot. And when someone asks you what you truly want, you genuinely don't know. Jung realized that this chamber of self-abandonment produces a terrifying inner void. The patient told him, "I succeeded at everything I was supposed to want, yet I felt completely hollow inside. I didn't know who I was beneath all the shoulds and have-tos." But even more dangerous is the seventh place Jung identified, a realm entirely within your own mind, the basement of the shadow. Here lie the parts of yourself you have locked away because they were too frightening, too shameful, or too painful to face. The patient had spent years avoiding this inner space. Whenever painful memories, shameful thoughts, or difficult emotions surfaced, he pushed them down into what Jung called the personal unconscious. But Jung discovered something unsettling. What you bury does not stay buried. It grows stronger in the dark, influencing your behavior in ways you cannot see. The patient found himself sabotaging relationships, overreacting to minor slights, and repeating patterns he had sworn never to repeat. Trauma research confirms that unprocessed emotional content lives within your nervous system, creating chronic dysregulation until it is brought into conscious integration. Jung called this shadow possession, when the rejected parts of yourself begin to control your life from the unconscious. The patient confessed, "I became everything I hated about my father, but I couldn't see it until the damage was already done." The shadow basement is dangerous precisely because avoidance gives more power to what is rejected, not less. These disowned parts manifest as projections, addictions, sudden rage, or inexplicable self-sabotage. And yet Jung also saw that the shadow contains immense power and creativity. Once consciously integrated, the patient's anger transformed into passionate defense of what mattered most. His grief deepened into profound empathy. His shame evolved into fierce compassion for others facing similar struggles. Signs that you are avoiding the shadow basement include emotional reactions that surprise even you, the repetition of destructive relationship patterns despite knowing better, harsh judgments of others for traits you secretly fear in yourself, chronic anxiety or depression without a clear cause, and the haunting sense that you are battling an invisible enemy within. Jung realized that healing requires descending into this basement not with self-condemnation, but with curiosity and compassion. And once you can see these 7 dangerous places, how do you escape them? Jung developed what he called the process of individuation, a systematic path towards psychological freedom. The first step is conscious recognition. You cannot leave a place if you do not even know you are in it. The patient had to honestly acknowledge which of these environments he inhabited daily. This required brutal honesty without self-judgment. The second step is environmental auditing. Examine every space you enter regularly, both physical and digital. Jung taught that awareness transforms unconscious influence into conscious choice. Ask yourself, does this environment help me grow, or does it keep me small? The third step is strategic withdrawal. You do not need to abandon your life, but you must limit your exposure to toxic psychological environments. The patient began with small changes. reducing time in toxic social circles, setting boundaries with negative people, creating daily periods of solitude and reflection. The fourth step is conscious integration. This is where Jung's approach becomes revolutionary. It is not enough to merely avoid negative environments. You must deliberately cultivate positive ones. Surround yourself with people who challenge you kindly, with spaces that nourish growth, with environments where authenticity is valued. And then comes the fifth step, shadow work. Carl Jung believed that until you face what you have hidden in the basement of your own shadow, you will unconsciously continue to recreate toxic patterns wherever you go. This is not something that can be bypassed with willpower alone. It requires deep inner work, therapy, journaling, or any method that can bring unconscious material into the light of awareness. Jung insisted that freedom of the psyche is not a single achievement, but an ongoing process, something that demands constant vigilance, because the mind always has the temptation to slip back into familiar traps. These hidden and dangerous places within the psyche are seductive precisely because they seem to offer comfort. They provide an illusion of belonging, of familiarity, of safety in repeating the same roles and patterns. Yet this comfort is false. True growth requires the courage to choose truth over convenience, authenticity over approval, and consciousness over denial. One of Jung's patients, after 6 months of work, told him, "I never realized how much of my energy was being drained by these toxic spaces. Now that I have stepped out of them, I feel like I have regained my own mind." Jung carefully documented these transformations, and what he observed became a map for countless others seeking psychological freedom. Once this patient left the echo chamber of unchallenged thought, something remarkable happened. Their critical thinking improved dramatically. They began to question assumptions they had once accepted blindly. They started seeking multiple perspectives instead of repeating group opinions. Their decisions shifted away from the pull of conformity and toward evidence, reason, and self-reflection. Leaving the arena of constant comparison was another turning point. Outside that space, the patient discovered genuine interests and personal goals that had been buried under years of measuring self-worth against others. No longer enslaved to the constant weighing of value in relation to external standards, they began to pursue work and relationships aligned with their true values, not just their image. This was not only liberating, it was transformative. But escaping the theater of performance was perhaps the hardest step. It meant disappointing people who preferred the mask rather than the authentic self. It required confronting the painful truth that relationships based on performance are not real relationships at all. Jung reminded them that the self that hides behind an act may win applause, but it will never experience real intimacy. True connection can only emerge when the mask is dropped and the authentic person stands unguarded. There was also the space of silent suffering, where pain is swallowed and never expressed. Escaping it required learning completely new skills of communication, how to voice needs, how to set boundaries, how to ask for support. These were skills the patient had never been taught in their family of origin, and practicing them felt like learning an entirely new language. But without them, silent suffering only deepens, becoming an invisible prison. To leave the storm of chaos behind meant something different, developing tolerance for stillness. Many people escape into chaos because silence feels unbearable. It brings anxiety, boredom, and the surfacing of unresolved emotions. Yet Jung knew that wisdom only emerges in the space of contemplation. When silence is endured, it gradually transforms into clarity, into the fertile ground where insight is born. Perhaps the most frightening transformation came in escaping the chamber of self-abandonment. This required making decisions based not on external approval, not on the expectations of society, family, or peers, but on one's own inner truth. It was terrifying because it meant disappointing some people, losing some validation, and even confronting rejection. But it also meant, at last, beginning to live authentically, in alignment with one's deeper essence. The work in the shadow's basement never truly ends. Each integration makes the individual more whole, more compassionate, and less likely to project inner wounds onto others. Jung noticed that people who escape these traps do not merely feel better, they become different human beings. Their relationships transform, their decision-making grows clearer, and they begin to embody what Jung called psychological sovereignty. Yet Jung also offered a sobering truth. These dangerous spaces never disappear. They will always exist, and they will always remain seductive. The echo chambers will continue to offer the illusion of easy belonging. The arenas of comparison will whisper promises of motivation. The theaters of performance will tempt with approval. Silent suffering will disguise itself as peace. The storms of chaos will distract from deeper wounds. The chamber of self-abandonment will seduce with the avoidance of conflict. And the basement of the shadow will always conceal shame. But none of these spaces hold real freedom. True mental strength is born only from choosing growth over comfort, authenticity over approval, and consciousness over convenience. The essential question, Jung said, is not whether you will encounter these places. You certainly will. The question is whether you will recognize them when you are there, whether you will find the courage to leave, and whether you will create a psychological environment where others too can be free. Jung believed that the future of human consciousness depends on individuals brave enough to choose psychological freedom over the unconscious pull of the collective. That choice begins with something simple but profound: recognizing where you stand right now and deciding where you truly wish to be. Your mind is not your enemy, but the places where you allow it to dwell can easily become your prison or your path to liberation. Which of these 7 dangerous places have you spent too much of your time in? Think about it carefully, because even if the answer feels uncomfortable, acknowledging it is already the beginning of something greater. Often, the simple act of naming the place where we have remained stuck becomes the very first step towards psychological freedom. To recognize where we have been is to recognize the invisible chains that have been holding us down. And once those chains are visible, they lose much of their power. This is why self-awareness is not a luxury, but a necessity. Without it, we continue to wander through the same patterns, circling the same mental landscapes, never realizing that liberation is only one act of recognition away. Take a moment to reflect. Was it the place of fear, where every decision felt like a risk too great to take, where opportunities passed by because doubt whispered louder than courage? Or maybe it was the place of anger, where resentment built walls so high that love and understanding could not find a way in. Some of us have lived too long in the place of comparison, where the worth of our own existence was measured against the lives of others, leaving us blind to our unique light. Others have remained in the place of regret, endlessly replaying scenes from the past, as if they could be altered, when in truth, they can only be integrated. And then there are those who inhabit the place of apathy, where nothing seems to matter, where passion has been silenced and life feels like a grey repetition. Wherever your answer lies, do not judge yourself harshly. Every human being spends time in these landscapes because they are part of the human condition. What matters is not that you have been there, but that you are willing to recognize it now. That recognition is the crack through which light enters. The moment you admit to yourself, "This is where I have been," you are no longer completely trapped by it. You are already standing with one foot outside. Awareness transforms the prison into a classroom, and every painful moment lived there becomes a lesson that prepares you for growth. So I invite you not only to think privately, but also to share your reflections. When you give words to your experience, you release a part of its weight. When you express your journey, you offer a mirror for someone else who may still be lost in the same place. Your story may become the exact spark they need to see that they too can find their way out. Do not underestimate the healing power of dialogue. It is in conversation, in exchange, and in shared vulnerability that transformation expands beyond the individual and becomes collective. And remember, this is not the end of your exploration. There are always deeper dimensions of the mind and soul waiting to be discovered. Every step of awareness, every small realization, opens the door to a wider horizon. The journey inward is endless, but with each step, you reclaim more of your freedom, your clarity, and your truth. So if this reflection has touched you, do not forget to stay connected, because there are countless more insights that can reshape the way you relate to your own mind. Thank you for being here, for daring to look within, and for giving yourself the gift of reflection. Until we meet again, continue walking boldly, continue naming the places where you have been, and continue moving toward the vast, untapped possibilities that await you. We will meet again, in another moment, in another layer of awareness, perhaps even in another dimension. You're not here by chance. Something deep within you led you to this video at this very moment, and once you've reached the end, you'll understand why. There are moments in life when you feel a presence nearby, even though no one is physically around you. A soft warmth in your chest, a chill that isn't from the cold, a sudden wave of peace in the middle of chaos. You don't look for it, you don't try to explain it, but it's there, as if someone is silently watching over you from a realm beyond your sight. It doesn't always come with signs you can touch or name, but when your soul begins to awaken, this presence starts revealing itself in subtle ways, as if it's been patiently waiting for the exact moment to make itself known. The first sign appears when you start to notice small synchronicities that repeat themselves with no logical explanation. You see the same numbers over and over again. Mirror hours, repeating sequences. You receive messages at the perfect moment. Lyrics from songs speak directly to your heart, as if written just for you. And even if you try to ignore it, deep down, a part of you knows these aren't mere coincidences. They're a form of communication. This isn't superstition or fantasy. It's an energetic language, one that doesn't rely on words, but on frequencies. For those who are awake, those frequencies are unmistakable, clear, precise. Your spiritual angel doesn't shout, it whispers. And to hear that whisper, you don't need long prayers or elaborate rituals. What you need is presence, awareness, an openness to receive. Because the realm in which your angel moves is not one of words, it is one of intuition. And when your energy begins to align with theirs, the connection becomes stronger, more frequent, more natural. That's when you begin to understand that you're not imagining things. You're starting to remember. You don't need to see wings or hear a voice to know it's there. Your body senses it before your mind can understand. There's a lightness in the atmosphere, a sweetness that doesn't come from anything outside of you, a feeling of companionship that doesn't require physical presence. It's as if something wraps around you with invisible tenderness, a loving energy that asks for nothing in return, but simply wishes to be with you. And that feeling doesn't always come when everything is calm. Sometimes it shows up in the middle of confusion, at a moment of surrender, when you don't know what else to do. And suddenly, for reasons you can't explain, you feel that everything is going to be okay, even though nothing external has changed. That's not coincidence. That's an energetic intervention, a subtle way of saying, you're not alone. Keep going. Often, this communication comes in the form of gentle but persistent intuitions, a thought that appears out of nowhere, a silent warning that urges you to change direction, a sudden impulse that leads you exactly to where you need to be. These aren't ordinary thoughts. They're messages encoded in sensation, translated through your inner perception. Your angel doesn't interrupt your journey. It walks beside you, shining light. And when it communicates, it does so in a way that only you can recognize, because that connection is unique, intimate, sacred. There are moments when you feel inexplicably protected, as if something invisible has stepped between you and whatever could have harmed you. A sudden change in direction, a decision made for no apparent reason that turned out to be exactly what was needed. These things aren't simple coincidences. They're subtle interventions, guided from a realm that sees far beyond what your eyes can perceive. And all of it happens not because you ask, but because you allow it. Because without realizing it, your energy has opened itself to the invisible. And that opening is enough for communication to begin. Not as an external voice imposing itself on you, but as a familiar presence that has always been there. The only difference is, now you're finally beginning to hear it. And that hearing doesn't happen through your ears. It happens in your body, in your chest, in the quiet way a soft certainty settles into your being without warning. You don't need to be in deep meditation to feel it. It can happen while walking, doing something mundane, or even in the midst of one of your hardest moments. Because spiritual angels don't only show up when everything is peaceful. They appear exactly when you need them most, without you having to ask. Have you noticed how certain decisions that once filled you with doubt now feel clearer? As if a wiser, quieter part of yourself is guiding you without explanations. That's part of your angel's language. It doesn't give you reasons, it gives you direction. And you follow that direction not because you understand it, but because it feels undeniably true. Sometimes there are even physical sensations, unexpected yet gentle. A light pressure in your chest, a warmth across your back, a breeze where there is no wind. And though your mind searches for explanations, your soul already knows. It's being touched by something that doesn't belong to this world, but has chosen to be here with you in this one. Your spiritual angel isn't here to save you. It's here to remind you of your strength, to walk beside you, not to carry your weight. And each time it communicates, it's not to give you answers, but to help you remember that the answers have always been within you. This guidance does not control, it supports. It doesn't interfere with your choices. It illuminates the paths your soul is already ready to walk. And when you acknowledge this, when you stop doubting this connection, the relationship becomes clearer, more constant, more alive. Because the spiritual world doesn't require proof. It requires openness. And you, deep down, have already begun to open. The second sign is when you begin to receive repetitive symbolic messages that resonate with you in a deeply personal and emotional way. These are not isolated coincidences that randomly appear in your life. They are patterns, precise and persistent, echoing through your experiences so clearly that something inside you knows they have meaning. You start seeing the same word in different places. You dream of an image and then encounter it in real life. Or certain animals cross your path during key moments. Numbers appear again and again with uncanny precision, to the point where calling them coincidences no longer feels honest. These signs aren't coming from the outside in the way we usually think. They move through a subtle channel, a spiritual current that your guardian angel uses to reach you. This presence doesn't impose or interrupt your journey, but walks alongside it, offering signs and synchronicities to accompany you. You might not always grasp their full meaning in the moment, but you feel them. And that feeling is enough. Your soul recognizes a more ancient language, one that doesn't rely on logic, but on vibration, on energy, on intuition. Sometimes it's a single word, overheard at just the right moment, that strikes you deep within, as if the universe whispered it only to you. Other times, it's a phrase that finds you when you're on the verge of giving up, or a book, a song, or a number that appears just when you most needed confirmation of something your heart already knew. These aren't coincidences, they're communication. Your spiritual guide is speaking through your surroundings. What once seemed ordinary now becomes sacred. Everyday life becomes a vehicle for the divine. And as you grow more present, more connected with the unseen world, you begin to notice those signals, not with surprise, but with gratitude. You no longer need validation from others. You just know. You understand, without a doubt, that you're being guided, that those small, silent signs aren't meant to amuse or distract you, but to remind you that a loving force is with you, walking beside you, communicating in symbols, because symbols are the language of the soul. Over time, you stop trying to analyze every message with your rational mind. It's no longer about decoding each symbol like a puzzle. The purpose of these signs isn't to give you quick answers. It's to awaken something within you. A forgotten memory, a dormant sensitivity, a quiet certainty that begins to grow even without explanation. The message isn't just in the symbol, it's in the way it resonates in you, in the way you pause when you notice it, in how your body reacts, in how something within you goes still for a brief moment, as if that symbol touched a hidden string that hadn't vibrated in years. These repetitions aren't for entertainment. They are anchors, anchors to help you remember that you are seen, that you are being watched over from a plane of pure love. This guidance is constantly at work, hidden within what appears to be the ordinary. When your awareness becomes more open and receptive, randomness begins to fade. Everything transforms into a potential message. Anything can become a sign. In those moments, your relationship with reality begins to shift. You no longer see the world as a random, disconnected place, but as a symbolic field, where spirit communicates through the subtle, through the invisible, through the things you used to overlook. It's a conversation without a voice, but full of meaning. A conversation that occurs every time your attention aligns with your energetic perception. Your angel isn't testing you. It's reminding you how to feel beyond what is obvious. And when you respond to those signs with presence, when you allow yourself to believe in what resonates even without visible proof, the connection deepens. The symbol stops being an isolated event. It becomes a confirmation. And you stop being a mere observer. You become an active participant in the dialogue, an awakened soul, ready to receive what once went unnoticed. Third sign. You begin to experience a sudden, inexplicable peace at the exact moments when everything around you suggests you should feel the opposite. You're going through something difficult. Maybe you're facing uncertainty, tension, emotional pain, or the weight of an unresolved situation. And suddenly, without any logical explanation, something inside you quiets down. It's not because things have magically worked out on the outside, but because something profound has shifted within you. That peace you're feeling, it's not emotional in nature. It's not the result of some mental trick, positive thinking, or a strategy you applied. It's something much deeper. It's a presence, a gentle, embracing energy that doesn't need to make an announcement to be felt. It simply is, and it fills you in a way that nothing else can. It's the way your spiritual guide, your angel, holds you. This presence doesn't remove the burden from your shoulders, but it makes it lighter. It doesn't take you out of the experience, but it walks beside you through it. And you feel it. You recognize it. Because in the middle of a moment that would normally overwhelm you, something keeps you grounded. Something keeps you centered, present, and somehow anchored to a part of yourself that you didn't even know existed. That center you've discovered, it's not just yours. It's shared. It's a sacred space, an energetic meeting point where your soul connects with its guide. There are no words exchanged, no promises made, just a deep, silent assurance that somehow, in some way, everything will be okay, even if you have no idea how that could possibly be. Sometimes this peace shows up only after you've completely surrendered, after you've run out of options, after your strength is gone, after your mind has stopped trying to control what it cannot. And instead of spiraling into despair, you find yourself breathing deeply, seeing things with a new clarity that you didn't expect. That clarity, that breath, that peace, it isn't coming from you alone. It's your angels surrounding you with a different frequency. It's tuning your being into a realm where fear loses its grip, where the only vibration strong enough to remain is trust. A trust you didn't learn, but one that was given to you. And when that peace enters you, you don't need to analyze it. You don't need to explain it or even understand it. You simply allow yourself to be filled by it. Because even if your mind still doesn't have the answers, your soul has already been touched by something far greater than anything you can explain. Something that holds you, not through logic, not through thought, but through a deeper, wiser, more loving vibration. Sometimes this feeling of serenity comes with an inner stillness, a sacred pause that you couldn't achieve on your own, no matter how much you tried. You're not running from the problem. You're not pretending it doesn't hurt. You're being held, supported from a realm you cannot see, yet surrounds you with a pure intention. Don't break. Remember your center. This is one of the most subtle and beautiful ways your angel speaks to you. They don't have to appear before your eyes to make their presence known. They do it through silence, the kind that makes room for breath, for stability, for listening. Because without that silence, you'd miss the message beneath the noise. And in those moments, something inside you finds balance. What once felt like a chaotic storm now feels manageable. Not because the chaos disappeared, but because you have changed. Your internal state has shifted. Your field has been touched by a higher energy, and everything that this energy touches begins to rearrange itself in a new, more harmonious way. This is not some external miracle swooping in to fix things. It's a loving presence, awakening the strength already within you. It's reminding you of the power that lives inside you, the part of you that fear made you forget. And after living through something like that, after feeling that inexplicable peace, you know it wasn't just in your head. You know something or someone was with you. And even if you can't describe it perfectly, even if the words never come out quite right, there's a mark left on your chest, a vibration that lingers, a wordless whisper that somehow told you without ever speaking a word, I'm with you. The fourth sign is when you begin to notice an unusual energetic sensitivity when you're in certain places or near certain people. Your perception becomes sharper, more refined, as if your body were functioning like a spiritual radar. Without any clear reason, you feel peace in places where you never had before, or discomfort in spaces that seem completely normal. It's not something you can explain rationally. It's something you just know. Your intuition activates without asking for permission. And it happens because your spiritual guide is helping you refine your field, helping you recognize which energies strengthen you and which ones drain you. This connection doesn't give you concrete instructions. It offers perception, a sensitivity that doesn't come from thought, but from alignment with more subtle realms. Your body starts reacting differently. There are places where you can breathe more deeply, and people who make you feel at ease, as if something invisible is affirming you, telling you, yes, this is right. And then there are other times when your energy contracts without any clear reason. You just know you're not supposed to stay there. That invisible guidance isn't here to impose limits, but to help you recognize for yourself what resonates with your path and what no longer vibrates with you. What you used to tolerate without thinking now feels heavy. What once went unnoticed now hits you strongly. And that shift isn't random. It's a response to the subtle presence of your angel, who, without words or visible signs, is training you to listen more with your soul than with your senses. This sensitivity isn't a burden, it's a tool, and it's one of the most delicate yet powerful ways in which the spiritual world teaches you how to protect your energy and walk with more clarity, more lightness, more truth. At first, this new sensitivity may confuse you. You ask yourself why you feel exhausted in certain places, why some people make you feel uneasy, even though they haven't done anything noticeable. But over time, you understand that it's not judgment, it's perception. Your energy system is beginning to respond with greater accuracy to what your soul already knew, long before you did. Your spiritual angel isn't here to change your environment. They're here to prepare you to move through it with greater awareness. They do so not by changing what you see, but by refining what you feel. Every time you pay attention to that subtle language, you strengthen the connection. Every time you honor what you perceive, the guidance becomes clearer. You don't need external signs to confirm what you already know within. But when you ignore it, something inside you dims. When you listen, something inside you expands. And that expansion shows up in simple but powerful choices. You step away from what disturbs your peace, even if you can't explain why. You gravitate toward what nourishes your energy, even if it doesn't make sense to anyone else. You begin to choose with your soul, not your mind. And each choice, guided by that sensitivity, brings you closer to your truth. That's a quiet, yet constant way your spiritual angel walks with you, not by solving things for you, but by teaching you to feel from a higher plane. And when you learn to trust that perception, life begins to organize itself around what truly resonates with you, without effort, without explanation, just from the coherence of your highest frequency. That coherence begins to show in everything you do. Without realizing it, you change the way you speak, the kinds of conversations you're willing to have, even the silences you choose to respect. You're no longer interested in what's superficial because your refined energy starts seeking depth in everything. Your angel doesn't tell you what to do. They help you remember what you already knew, but had forgotten under the weight of the noise. And as you respond to that guidance, your inner world finds order. You no longer need external validation, because there is an inner clarity that grows every time you honor what you feel. That energetic sensitivity doesn't just protect you, it also connects you with other souls who vibrate like you do. You start crossing paths with people who understand you without the need for explanations, who sense the invisible the same way you do. And suddenly, you no longer feel strange, or alone, or out of place. Because when a soul starts listening to its field and allows itself to be guided by the unseen, life changes its tone entirely. Everything becomes softer, clearer, truer. Your spiritual angel doesn't walk ahead of you, they walk beside you. And every time you choose to honor that sensitivity you've been given, you strengthen that bond. A bond that isn't measured in words, but in vibration, and one that stays with you, even when you don't think about it, even when you forget. Because in the most subtle realms, love doesn't need to be remembered in order to remain. The fifth sign appears when you begin to feel a profound connection with something greater while you're in silence. It's not just the absence of noise, it's a presence that emerges the moment you stop doing, when the outside world dims for a while and something within you starts to awaken. It can happen when you're alone, surrounded by nature, or even during a brief pause in your daily routine. Suddenly, without seeking it, a soft warmth fills your being. There are no thoughts, no explanations, just a feeling of completeness that doesn't come from anything you can see. That sensation isn't created solely by you. It's your spiritual angel drawing near. It's their way of saying, "I'm here," in the space that appears when you allow yourself to pause. In that state, time seems to stop. Your breath shifts, your mind calms, and for a moment, you feel that everything is exactly where it's meant to be. There's no need for anything to get better. Nothing is missing, nothing is extra. You're simply present, entirely whole. In those moments, the bond becomes clearer, more tangible, not because something extraordinary happens, but precisely because nothing does. And in that emptiness, full of presence, the connection deepens. Your spiritual angel doesn't need to speak to be heard. They communicate with your soul through silence, because only there can they reach what words can't touch. And when you learn to dwell in that space with humility, without demands or expectations, their guidance becomes more constant, more luminous, more yours. It's not about meditating or forcing a state of awareness. It's about opening your heart to what's already there, waiting to be seen, without noise, without haste, with reverence. Because in truth, That silent peace isn't something that comes from you. It comes toward you. And each time you allow yourself to step into that space, you're saying yes. Yes to the connection. Yes to the guidance. Yes to the invisible love that's been with you long before you knew how to name it. That yes you give in silence doesn't need to be spoken. It's an opening that's felt more than thought, a kind of energetic agreement your soul instantly recognizes. And every time you do it, every time you surrender to that stillness, the bond grows stronger. Not because the presence increases, but because you become more able to perceive it. There are days when closing your eyes for just a few seconds is enough, and you feel that connection once again. There's no need to ask, to seek, or to understand. You just have to be there, in what's already happening, effortlessly, because your communication with your angel isn't something you build, it's something you remember. And in the silence, you remember everything. The mind may forget, the body may doubt, but your energy knows. It knows that this presence is real, that the whisper isn't imagination, that this moment of stillness isn't emptiness, it's communion. And from there, without needing external signs, you begin to feel guided in all things, not because life becomes easier, but because you become deeper, more connected to your essence, more attuned to the frequency of what's walking with you. Silence transforms into wordless prayer, into a bridge between realms, into a space where the divine doesn't appear as something distant, but as something that lives in you, through you, beside you. And it is there, in the simplest things, where the most sacred truths are revealed. Your spiritual angel doesn't need grand signs to speak to you. They just need you to learn how to listen when no one else is listening. Sixth sign. You begin to notice that your thoughts, emotions, or words are gently redirected towards something more aligned, without knowing exactly how it happens. You're about to say something that doesn't resonate with you, and you stop. You're about to make a decision based on fear, but something within you, without clear reason, nudges you to wait. There is no external voice, no clear instruction, but an internal pause shifts your direction. That isn't random, it's subtle intervention. It's your spiritual angel influencing your mental frequency, not to control you, but to remind you of your center. You start noticing that thoughts which used to dominate you now lose their grip quickly, as if a deeper current were correcting your path without any effort on your part. You're aware, and it doesn't feel like control. It feels like guidance, a guidance that protects you, tunes you, doesn't interfere, but brings you back again and again to your truth. There are days when you notice you're acting with more compassion, more patience, more presence, without having planned it. It simply emerges as if a higher part of you, constantly connected to your angel, takes the lead gently for a few moments. That influence doesn't override your will. It elevates it. It reminds you of who you are when you're not caught up in the noise. It brings you back to your original frequency, not through effort, but with subtlety. And the more you allow yourself to follow that flow, the more natural it becomes. Your energy adjusts, your words grow more thoughtful, your presence more aware, because that connection isn't trying to change you from the outside. It's helping you remember who you are from the inside. And when you start living from that place, from that cleaner frequency, everything around you begins to respond differently. The situations that used to disturb you no longer hold the same power over you. Not because you've developed a mental strategy, but because something greater is acting with you, surrounding you, guiding you. You realize that this gentle redirection doesn't happen just once. It happens constantly. In the small gestures, in the fleeting thoughts, you now choose not to feed, in the way you now choose to respond instead of react. And it's not always you making that shift consciously. There's something beside you, holding your field when you can't, reminding you again and again that your soul knows the way. Your spiritual angel isn't here to correct you. It's here to help you remember. And it does so without punishment, without guilt, with immense sweetness, as if everything about it were made of infinite patience. It doesn't rush you. It doesn't demand. You're simply met at the exact point where your energy begins to soften and your awareness opens to reunion. It's like an inner dance. Sometimes you step in the wrong direction, and something soft, almost imperceptible, brings you back, not with force, but with a whisper, not with fear, but with truth. And once you've felt that movement more than once, when you recognize that presence surrounding you silently, you no longer doubt. You know you're not thinking differently by chance. You know you're not healing alone. There is something, someone, walking with you from the most subtle plane, simply to remind you that you don't have to do it all alone, simply to return you, again and again, to what you truly are. The seventh sign appears when you begin to feel a deep sense of gratitude that arises without any apparent reason. It's not the kind of gratitude that comes when things go well, nor the one you feel after receiving something you were hoping for. This is a quiet gratitude, with no external trigger. Something within you suddenly opens up and says thank you, without words, without logical reason, without needing anything more. This kind of gratitude doesn't come from the mind. It isn't a thought or something you construct. It's a vibration, flowing from the soul, awakened by a loving presence that gently surrounds you. And that presence is your spiritual angel. It shows up in the middle of everyday life. A walk, a glance at the sky, a moment where the world pauses just long enough for you to feel that everything makes sense, even if you can't explain it. And in that moment, all that emerges is a breath, a warm sensation that radiates from the center of your chest through your entire being. You don't need to be at peace to feel it. Sometimes it shows up during hard times, when everything feels uncertain, and yet something within you lights up, as if part of you knows that despite it all, you are being held, guided, and loved from a place you cannot see. But you can feel it as real as anything else in this life. This kind of gratitude asks for nothing. It just expresses itself. And when it does, it transforms you. Your eyes soften, your heart expands, and you understand that this feeling doesn't come from anything you've achieved, but from something you're remembering, that you're not alone, that you never were. And that gratitude starts to shift your energy without you needing to do anything at all. It's not an action, it's a state, a silent openness to the unseen, a way of telling the spiritual world, I'm here, I'm listening, I'm ready. No matter what you're facing on the outside, when that gratitude appears, it transforms everything from within. What was heavy becomes lighter. What was confusing becomes clearer. What was painful becomes more bearable. Because the presence of your spiritual angel doesn't erase the process, but it illuminates it. And in that gentle, subtle, quiet light, a form of thankfulness is born, one that has no cause, because it's older than any circumstance. Over time, this gratitude becomes constant. It begins to walk with you, even through the unexpected. It doesn't remove pain, but it reminds you that you're not falling alone, that there's an invisible net holding you, a whisper with every step, a frequency that wraps around everything, even when you don't realize it. And that frequency is love. Not romantic or emotional love, but love as pure energy, as protective consciousness, as eternal presence. Gratitude then becomes the language you begin to use to communicate. You don't need to ask. You don't need to understand. Just give thanks from that inner space where the soul recognizes guidance and honors it, without noise, without spectacle. Just you, your angel, and that sacred bond that doesn't need to be seen to be real. Not every message arrives with words. Some arrive as calm, as intuition, as gratitude that rises for no reason. And when you start to feel all of that, it's not that something new is happening, it's that you're finally listening. Your spiritual angel doesn't speak from outside. It reminds you from within. And now that you recognize it, the bond becomes impossible to deny. If this message resonated deep within you, if you felt something light up while you were listening, don't ignore it. It's your soul responding to a truth that has always been there. Subscribe to Whispers of the Soul. Keep walking this path of connection, awareness, and light. You didn't come here to learn something new. You came to remember what your soul already knew.